I'm making this video just in case there are any turkeys who are thinking about voting for Christmas. Here we see John Swinney today in Edinburgh marching at the head of the Pride parade with his End Conversion Practices banner. Quick reminder what a conversion practice is. Well, helping someone who wants to move away from an LGBT lifestyle identity. It could be that they want to change. For example, someone might be transgender, they don't want to be anymore. It might be someone's got homosexual attractions, they want to move away from that to heterosexuality. Or it could be just to suppress. So it could be someone who's got homosexual sexual attractions and they just don't want to act on them. They don't want to enter into homosexual sexual relationships. That will be called trying to suppress their sexuality. So that's what the law would ban. Trying to help people in that process would become a criminal offence. I mean, the classic case that they're thinking about would be a church leader, for example, who would be helping someone who comes to them and says, I'm experiencing same-sex attraction, I don't want to act on it, can you help me, can you pray with me? The church leader says, yes, I can, I'll help you with that, because I think you're doing the right thing. And as far as John Swinney is concerned, crime. Let's get that church leader locked up, is what he thinks. Now, church leaders, one case, it would also apply to parents. The parent says, oh, come on, 5-year-old son, boys don't wear dresses. We're not really going to let you do that. That's not a good thing to do. Then that parent could be on the way to prison as well if they persist in that, or the child being taken off them, etc. So remember, it talks about trying to change, but also suppressing. So even helping someone to be celibate, to not act on sexual desires, would be a criminal offence. And remember, with this crime, I mean, the bill's already on its way through the Parliament and it will pass. Consent has no defence. So when the church leader says, this person came to me and asked me to help them with this change that they wanted to make in their life, that's no defence. Because you can't consent to torture. That's the logic in the Scottish Parliament. That this is a form of torture. So obviously, even if someone seems to be consenting, they're not really. Because LGBT people, we've got to treat them like children and assume they don't really know what they want. And the documentation around this law makes it quite clear that it's primarily aimed at religious contexts. Speaking from a Christian point of view, it's basically outlawing helping people in a way that reflects the teaching of the Christian gospel, including abstinence from types of sexual relationships that are seen as sinful within traditional Christian teaching. So the idea of finding forgiveness and freedom from, for example, same-sex attraction, that message, helping someone on the basis of that message would become a crime. Now, so actually committing what they call conversion therapy would be a crime, but also if the state decides that they think there's a risk that you might engage in conversion therapy, then a civil order can be taken out against a person or an organisation that can place various restrictions on them to make sure they don't help people, for example, in the light of the Christian gospel in the future. Obviously, sting operations will be very common. You'll get LGBT activists who will go along, speak to the church leader and say, oh, can you help me? I've got that. And then the church leader will help them. They'll record it all on the phone and that church leader will be in very hot water. All right, quick run through the different parties' position on this. SNP obviously all for it. Within the SNP, of course, Kate Forbes. Kate Forbes says that conversion therapy is abhorrent and needs to be banned. That's what Kate Forbes says. Now, whenever I say that, people normally say, oh, she didn't really mean that, and she didn't really say it, and maybe she meant something. I'm telling you what she said. Abhorrent is how Kate Forbes describes that. I mean, the Labour Party, in their manifesto, they're probably going to be the UK government. They say that they're going to do it, absolutely. So if someone in your church says, I'm going to be a candidate for the Labour Party, I think an appropriate response is, so you're saying you want the leaders of our church arresting and prosecuting if they help someone on the basis of traditional Christian teaching? Because if you're saying you're representing the Labour Party, that is what you're standing for. That is what you are promoting. And that should be a very awkward conversation, I'd have thought. Right, the Conservatives, 2021 Scottish election, it was in their manifesto, introduce a ban like this. In their manifesto for this election, it says the conversion practice is abhorrent. But they're not quite sure how to introduce a ban, so they're saying they're not sure they're going to do it yet. Let's wait and see. In Scotland, I would imagine the Conservatives might oppose the transgender bit, but the lesbian and gay bit, I would imagine they will not oppose that, and that will just go through as it is. Lib Dems and Greens, of course, they're all for it totally. The Reform Party, it's a bit too controversial for them to touch. They probably oppose the transgender bit, but the lesbian and gay bit, I think that's they'd be a bit too unpolitically correct to approach that issue. Reform only deals with issues that are now. Issues that are, were seen as a bit, they were a controversy 10 years ago, 20 years ago. They won't really touch those. So I don't see the Reform Party really opposing this. And it's obviously looming, it's coming. And so might you not have hoped the Reform Party would take a stand on it and say we're against this? But they have not. So if you want to see people convicted for these things, we're happy to see people convicted, then really any of those parties I've mentioned could be a choice for you. Now it's going to happen. In Scotland, this bill will pass, and Christian leaders' parents will find themselves in court and will be convicted of this so-called crime. And when that happens, I'll defend them to the hilt. I will speak up publicly. I will say I completely agree with what they did. This is an outrage. This is an infringement of religious liberty, also freedom of speech, etc. This is completely wrong. But if I meet the people in person, I might just ask them quietly, who did you vote for in the last election? And if they say Labour, well, I think it's a point worth making, isn't it? Now, you may say, or they may say, well, I voted Labour, but I didn't like this bit, but I liked the other things, so I still voted for them in any case. And I'd say, well, in other words, you weighed up all of their policies, and in the end, you decided to vote for a party that will criminalise the application of the Christian gospel to LGBT people. That's what you decided. And I'd say, from my point of view, as a Christian, that's a red line I could not cross. But you obviously decided you could cross that. And I would invite them to search their conscience before voting in the next election. Now, to my mind, for Christians, to pray about religious freedom, thank you, Lord, for the freedoms we enjoy in this nation, and then to say vote Labour, I'd say this makes no sense. You can't thank God for religious freedom and then vote for a party that's going to take it away. That makes no sense. It's like praying against racism and then voting for the BNP. It's like praying against the sexualization of children and then voting for the SNP. It's like praying for the unborn and then voting for any of the parties I've mentioned so far.